Hello everyone, my name is Anne Telford and I'm the Chair of Indigo Power. It's my pleasure on behalf of the board and our staff team to welcome you here this evening. We're delighted to have you with us. We know that there are people with us on the screen, behind the screen, from all over Eastern Australia at the moment. So many of you, and we're so pleased to have you with us. We're really delighted that we've got a lot of our own hometown crowd, if you'll pardon me saying that, from across the northeast of Victoria and Albury-Wodonga region. That's really, I guess, our heartland where we started, but we are growing and expanding, and it's just wonderful for me to see tonight that we've got people from right across different parts of Victoria, New South Wales, and also many people from Melbourne and Sydney. So welcome to you all. I'd also like to particularly welcome, I'm just seeing that someone can't hear me. So I'm hoping that it's coming through to most people. I'd also like to welcome and acknowledge my fellow directors who are also on screen or behind the screen with me tonight. Ben McGowan, our Managing Director, who will be talking to you soon. And we have Dr. Rowan O'Hagan, who is our Deputy Chair. Dr. Rick Thwaites, who is the Chair of our Projects Committee. Chris Gunner, who is the Chair of our Retail Sales and Marketing Committee. Gail Lee, our Finance Brain, who's Chair of our Finance Audit and Risk Committee. Matt Grogan, who many of you know, who has been our Company Secretary, who's just stepped aside from that role, but who is still providing us with great legal counsel when needed. So that's the team of the board, and we're all here with you tonight and really pleased to have you attend this really important webinar. I'd also like to take this opportunity to especially acknowledge the traditional owners of the land that we're all meeting on tonight. I'm here in Taungurung country in the northeast and very delighted to be have been working with the Taungurung people a little bit in recent months, and some of you may know that we actually have a partnership with Taungurung and have a generation project with them running down in Broadford, just out of Melbourne. So we pay our respects to the traditional owners. We acknowledge their connection to country, to land and to the water. And we really do appreciate their history and their culture. And I know that many of you have actually made a note that you're from different country as well. So we pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging. So tonight we're going to keep it fairly short and sweet for you. We might be the only thing standing between you and dinner, or Tuesday night cheap pizza, as it might be in my case, or whatever that might be for you. We're just going to have a short session with the main purpose tonight being to answer your questions. So not so much about us talking to you, but us listening to you and hearing your questions. And Ben McGowan is going to give you a very short, sort of contextual presentation for a few minutes, and then go straight into opening up for your questions. And he will answer those questions that you may have about the equity crowdsourced funding offer, or indeed about anything else about our organisation and the work that we're doing. But I just particularly, before I hand over to Ben, I'd like to say thank you all for your interest in our business. We know that that means that you're just as interested in action on climate change as we are. And we really value that, and we'd love to have you part of our team. So thanks again for being with us. And I'm now going to hand over to Ben McGowan, our Managing Director. Thank you.
Thanks, Anne, and welcome everyone tonight. So as Anne has said, we are going to have only a short presentation from me here. We're in our Beechworth office. We'll find out a little bit more about Indigo Power, who we are, and what we do. We'll have a little bit of information about the equity crowdsource funding offer that's currently open. And as Anne says, we'll move then to a broader Q&A session, which will be the main focus of this webinar. So tonight in the room here with me in Beechworth, at the old Beechworth Jail, we have Claire Birch, who's our engagement officer. She'll be online, you can see her there moderating, but we also have Fran Quintanilla, our marketing manager as well. And she's just going to give a quick rundown about how the Zoom webinar platform works and the Q&A, how we're going to run that as well. So hand over to her quickly.
Thanks, Ben, and thank you everyone for joining us tonight. Claire and I will be moderating and collecting all your questions. You can submit them through the Q&A box down on your screen, and you can submit them throughout the presentation, and Ben will answer them later. So please just shoot them through.
Thanks, Fran. Okay, so to give you an introduction to Indigo Power. So Indigo Power, really, we incorporated in November of 2018, and we incorporated with the real intention of helping us here in our communities in Northeast Victoria to contribute to the movement to address climate change. We knew at the time that the electricity sector, and it still is the largest driver of greenhouse gas emissions in our country, in Australia. We also knew, frustratingly, that we currently have the technologies to have a completely clean energy supply. We also know that the energy transition is going to happen and is happening already. But we had perhaps the sense of it being an opportunity that we could potentially miss out on here in our communities. And we have calculated that here in our little patch in Northeast Victoria, about $212 million leaves our community each year in electricity bills. So we wanted to capture some of that, and we wanted to keep some of that here and to create some benefit for our communities at the same time as we address this climate change problem. So we set up with a really clear purpose. And that purpose was to create a society powered by 100% renewable energy in a way that supports and empowers communities. We set up as a public unlisted company, and that's really important because we wanted to, a public unlisted company means that we can have true community ownership. We could have as many shareholders as we need. There's an unlimited shareholding we can have. So that was the first thing we did. The second thing was to set up as a certified social enterprise. And basically what that means is that 50% of any profits that we make will be going back into that purpose. So those two principles of community ownership and of a for purpose of the social enterprise are embedded in our constitution. So when we had our first public share offer, and we did the same thing, an equity crowdsource funding offer, it was in April of 2020. And when we came to our community, we came with what we thought was a really good idea. We wanted to set up, create a company that was able to lead the transition to renewable energy in our communities. And that share offer sold out in under 3 days. And we know a lot of people missed out. So we're here now for a second share offer. We're here because, well, it's always been a part of our plan. We said in that first offer that we would be coming back about now to deliver a second share offer. So here we are. But we're also here because that big idea, that plan we had, is starting to become a reality. And we really need your help to help continue making that idea a reality. So next I'll explain a little bit, that's a little bit about who we are. Next, I'll explain a little bit about what we do here at Indigo Power. So Indigo Power is set up around really four, you might have to just, probably next slide, I think, as well. And the next one again, thanks, Claire. So Indigo Power is set up to deliver four really key strategic areas. And that's all combining to connect local people to local sources of renewable energy, as we see sort of in this diagram here. So the first thing we do is we deliver a community energy retail service. And that's really about connecting customers through energy sharing to local sources of renewable energy, whether that's solar generated on rooftop households or whether that's more scale generation and storage. And the second thing we do is, well, we know that energy sharing is not going to reach 100% renewable energy for these communities. So we need to focus on building some scale generation, renewable energy generation and storage as well. And that's that second thing that we do, clean energy infrastructure. We also wanted to assist communities in getting these clean energy technologies out into communities, onto businesses, onto community buildings, onto households. And so we wanted to deliver clean energy solutions or clean energy projects is the third thing we do. And the final thing was, we know this transition is not going to happen by itself. We needed to be leaders in the community, and we needed to commit to innovation as well. So those are the four areas. When we came out in 2020, we said, these are the things we're going to do. And I'm really pleased to say we've made some really strong progress across each of those strategic areas. So in community energy retail, we're now up to over 1,100 customers. We've launched in the last year our energy share software, so people in a community can see how much of their energy supply can be accounted for from local sources of renewable energy. And that ability to connect local people to local sources of renewable energy meant that we're starting to be recognised. So Greenpeace, Australia's Green Energy Guide, we were labelled as one of Australia's greenest electricity providers, but also one of the great innovators, which obviously that recognition was really, really pleasing. So that local community, that local energy supply is starting to be noticed. So around clean energy infrastructure, we started at the community scale, and many of you would have heard about perhaps the Yakandanda community battery that we delivered last year, and what we believe is the first of its type in Australia, a community-owned battery supplying renewable energy to local customers each and every evening in Yakandanda. That was a project delivered in partnership with Totally Renewable Yakandanda. And the second thing we've done more recently is we've connected Patagonia Australia's 12 retail stores and offices to a large solar system installed on the rooftop of Cricket Albury Wodonga. And we're connecting those 12 sites with that energy generated in Wodonga through our energy share software. And that electricity generation is going to be sufficient to account for all of Patagonia's annual electricity consumption. So we started there at the community scale, and now we're moving on to bigger things. So we've got 2 feasibility studies happening at the moment. One's about taking what we've learned in Yakandanda with the Yakandanda community battery and replicating that in communities across the region here. And then looking at whether we can aggregate all those community batteries in a virtual power plant, aggregating, deploying those to deliver benefits to the grid, to trade the electricity wholesale market, and all those sorts of interesting things. The second thing we're looking at is the scale above that. And so we're funded to look at a storage facility in and around the Upper Murray region of Victoria, around Corryong, looking at how to deliver a large pumped hydro energy storage solution with those beautiful rolling hills here in northeast Victoria and that high rainfall. There's a really big opportunity there. So those feasibility studies are now underway, and we look forward to seeing the outcomes of those in the coming 18 months. So that's clean energy infrastructure. Clean energy projects, we're now delivering about $5.9 million worth of projects at the moment. But I think some of the most interesting ones are the ones we're delivering in partnership with bushfire affected communities in Tumbarumba and around, and in the Upper Murray region around Corryong as well. And so we've partnered with the Tumbarumba Chamber of Commerce, we've partnered with Upper Murray Incorporated, and collectively we've identified about 50 sites that are critical to community functioning during an emergency event. And we're now funded to project manage the delivery of solar, battery, smart grid technologies across all those sites to ensure that those communities have power in the next emergency event. And that's ranging all the way down from large community scale batteries at the hospitals, evacuation centres, those sorts of things, down through the ambulance stations, the pharmacies, the fuel stations, the bank ATMs, all the way through to neighbourhood safer places, the community halls out in that community. So those two projects we're really excited about, and we're currently delivering those two. And the final thing, community leadership and innovation. We started, when we first started Indigo Power, we knew that those partnerships with community were going to be so important. And we're really proud of the partnerships we have developed with community, with industry, with local government, with government departments and so on. But the work we've been doing in the community energy space is to, first of all, bring together a group of about 8 community energy groups back in 2018-19, and we've now grown that network to over 25. And we convene a regular meeting. We provide access to expertise, and those groups collaborate on shared projects. So we're really excited about the direction that's taking as well. So that's a little bit about where we're up to in our strategy. And next, to just give you a little bit of an idea about why we're raising funds and the current offer. So where we're up to as a company is we've been investing in the company. We've now got a mature staff team, we've got good organisational systems, we have well-developed networks, and we've got a really good brand as well. And so we expect to continue developing the company in that way until 2026, when we said in the 2020 offer, and we say again now, that that's our target, that's our plan for profitability, for a cash flow positive business. And that plan hasn't changed. So where we're up to at the moment is we have a project management service with large contracts in place. So that project work is funded and will continue to deliver that work. Now we're coming out to you and to the community to say, well, now we want to really make our community energy retail offer a really special product, a really special service. So that's what we'll be investing in. We want to provide in-house customer service, a really good service experience. We want to invest in a marketing program, and we want to, as Anne says, expand. We want to reach new markets. So those are the things we're committing to as a part of this share offer. And if we raise towards the maximum amount through this equity crowdsource funding offer, then we will have some funding to look at investing, delivering clean energy infrastructure projects as those feasibility studies begin to complete, and we do get a sense of some profitable projects that we can deliver. So how the offer itself works, to give you a quick rundown of that. So we're currently in the expression of interest phase, and that runs until June 6th. So we've still got a few more days for that to complete. Once that process is finished, we move to the private investment stage. So we've got a couple of days for those who have expressed an interest to convert that interest to an actual share purchase. Important to say at this point, I think, that when we did our first share offer, we didn't really get out of this stage. The offer was sold out pretty soon after this phase finished. So if you are interested in and considering purchasing Indigo Power shares, then I think pretty important to put that EOI in and preserve your position. And then the final stage then is to open up again to the public, to those who haven't expressed an interest, and again, anyone can invest at that stage. So the process obviously is an equity crowdsource funding offer through a licensed intermediary, Virtual. So we're working with Virtual, we're working through Virtual's webpage, their software, and so you'll recognise their name in the stuff we're doing around this share offer. And the other name, if you do purchase shares, to keep in mind is the company Boulevard, which is our share registry. So after the offer closes and you've completed your share purchase, we'll add you to our share registry, issue the share documents through Boulevard. So I want to leave it there for the presentation for now. We'll go to questions, but I do want to say we're really proud of the progress we've made to date, but we're also really excited to open up the share offer again because we know a lot of people missed out, and we're really excited to grow our community shareholder base from 281 where we are at the moment and welcome a new cohort of shareholders. So it's a really exciting time for us as a company. So we'll stop the presentation there and we'll move now to questions and answers. So I know Fran's been furiously writing down some of the questions over there, but now's the opportunity to put your questions in the Q&A chat there, and we'll get to all of those. Thanks, Fran.
Thanks, guys. We've had a lot of questions coming through the chat box. The first one, they relate to the investment offer itself. Where can people find the prospectus for the capital raising?
Yeah, great question. So in that slide on the journey we're going through on the share offer, we'll have what's called an offer document, which will give you access to all the things you would expect in a prospectus, our financials, the story of where we're going, where we've been, all that sort of thing will be in that offer document. The rights associated with the shares, all those sorts of things. So if you have expressed an interest, you will then have access to that document on the 7th of June. Yeah.
People are also wondering what percentage of ownership of Indigo Power is being proposed to be given in this investment offer.
Yeah, good question. So we do have a minimum and a maximum amount that we have to put up as a part of this process, and so that will mean different things, and that information will be in the offer document. But expecting this question, I did also write it down. So if we raise the maximum amount, the minimum amount, we're looking at about 39% of the company. The maximum amount is more like 58% of the company is being issued. And I think important in answering that question is to say we're 100% community owned. So with the people who own shares in Indigo Power are the people who bought shares in Indigo Power. So we don't have any founders or anything like that who own a portion of the company. We've at each stage, each share offer, we've had that opportunity to buy the company in that way. We haven't got a large percentage being owned by any of the founders or anything of that sort.
And just off that question, what amount of money are we trying to raise? Mm-hmm. And how does this compare to the capital raise, to the first one?
Oh, okay. So when we did the first offer, we raised raise $300,000, and that number really was, the story was a smaller raise now, and you may remember in April 2020, the start of the pandemic, an enormous amount of uncertainty. And in fact, when we were doing the offer over that period, the lockdown started, the first lockdown started, and so on, and the news got steadily worse. So we had a smaller share offer at that stage, 300,000, with the intention of coming back later for a larger share offer. And so at this stage, we're saying we raise a minimum of $550,000. So it's the larger one we had planned. Yeah.
I have more questions here.
Okay. So we've got a question here that says, Mondo are rolling out a VPP Edge. How does that project involve Indigo Power? And if it's separate, does Indigo Power have intentions of getting into the VPP space to to harness your community's holistic energy supply and demand? And that's a really good question. So Mondo are a partner of ours, and they're really experts in smart grid technologies, and they're currently delivering really an experiment, and this is this Mondo Edge program. So we're involved at the edges of that. We're currently in a conversation about the Yackandandah battery potentially participating in that program. But my understanding of that program is after that 2 years, it finishes, that experiment also finishes, and they have captured the data that they need. So this is part of the body of work about this feasibility study we're doing about the community batteries, is to look at, well, one, we're getting pretty familiar now in our project management work about how we put them in, how we project manage the installation, what the capital costs are. And the space that's changing are the rules around all of this sort of stuff, the national electricity rules. And so that space is still a bit more mobile, but we are currently looking at, well, how best do we do that? Because it certainly absolutely makes sense that if you're installing community batteries, then you are deploying them to get the maximum benefit possible in a virtual power plant. So that is actively, under consideration as a part of this feasibility study. So I've got one here as well about electric vehicles and the Indigo Power charging stations. So Indigo Power at the moment is going to operate its first electric vehicle charging station, and that's a partnership with YCDeco in Yackandandah, the community-owned petrol fuel station, farm supply business, community development company, and also a partnership with Totally Renewable Yackandandah. So we'll be the ones who operate that system, and that's going in probably in the next three or 4 months. So that will be our first. And we're currently looking at options to deliver more of those, including potentially one here in Beechworth, and looking at, well, can we create a trail of electric vehicle charging stations across northeast Victoria to start to draw more tourists into the region. I drive an electric vehicle. I suffer from range anxiety, but I know there's a really strong cohort of electric vehicle drivers that we can potentially draw through here with regular charging stations on a trail. So we are actively looking at electric vehicle charging stations. We've got one here about the expansion of the area of operations. What is envisaged and where? What is the order of priority? So I think answer that question in a couple of ways. So the first is we go where there's really a good, strong community who wants to work with us and the tools that we have. And so we're up working in Corryong, and we're up working in Tumbarumba, in Yackandandah, down in the Dandenong Ranges, down in Mansfield, those sorts of places, because that's where there's a strong community, a good community representative group that's willing to partner with us, and we're excited to work with. So in expanding across a larger footprint, it's not to say, well, we're going to market into everywhere. It's to say we're going to have more opportunity to set up more of these, what we call these community energy hubs, local sources of renewable energy, connecting people to local sources of renewable energy. We're going to be able to set those up in more communities. So we're looking like an expansion to be able to cover New South Wales and Victoria to start with, but it will be quite specific, I think, in where we go. The other point in that as well is, companies like Patagonia are increasingly coming to us and saying, we would like to partner with you on our energy supply. And we want to be able to answer yes to a company like Patagonia. Similar companies, we want to be able to say, yes, we can absolutely help you with that. So So it will be quite a strategic expansion, is my expectation, because certainly we have a real focus on doing the job really well here in our home patch as well. Okay, so I think leave that one there. Fran's busy there with more cards. So Indigo Power is a social enterprise. How do you balance this aspect of the business while providing a return on investment for shareholders? And I think that's a really important or good point to raise. Is we are a social enterprise, so we do have that dual commitment. And again, I think there's a couple of different ways to answer that. In terms of for shareholders, the thing we really commit to is you are buying shares in a company, and we want to protect the value of those shares, and so that shareholding hopefully increases across time, and that's one way of creating value for our shareholders. The second point, I guess, is the distribution of any dividends. It will be 50% going back to shareholders, but that other 50% does have to go back to our purpose. And that doesn't have to be just distributed to the community. It can be, further investment in things like the Yakandanda Community Battery to help make difficult projects happen. So again, we're not profitable at the moment, so we don't have that problem yet. I think important on this one to say as well, we have recently done the work to establish an Indigo Power Foundation, which is a separate independent company, and it is as well a charitable organisation. So that will be an important partnership for the Indigo Power company going forward in terms of distributing funds, but also in terms of raising funds itself to distribute and support the community energy movement that's happening right across the country. So the question here about how do we express interest? I've never bought shares before. Do we purchase directly via virtual or through the broker? So what happens is you express your interest through virtual, and then you'll get a notice to purchase shares on the 7th of June. And that process completes through the virtual platform. And I think important to say that, you are buying shares. It is a proper process, and it is regulated accordingly. So virtual do need to you have really secure systems. They have a really tight process to be able to purchase those shares. So you do that through the virtual system, and then they provide that information to Boulevard, who will make that recording, register those shares, and issue those shares. So that's how the process will happen. So important to know about virtual. Important also to know about Boulevard. So why is the offer document only available for a short period of time? I think so the offer document is released all at once, basically, and I think that's a principle of disclosure. So everyone gets access to the information, to the document at the same time. So it will be available. It'll be, I guess, publicly released on the 7th, and will be made available to those who've expressed an interest, but it'll be made available to everyone from that point in time. So it'll be there available for the whole investment process. And I think the reason it is that way is that disclosure sort of process. Yeah. So I've got one here from Fran as well about the renewable energy projects we're currently working on. I've described really the two in the Upper Murray, which are exciting projects. I've described a little bit about the electric vehicle charging stations that we're currently working on. The other stuff we're delivering at the moment is there's two projects that are really about engaging the community around renewable energy or about clean energy technologies. So the first is we're acting as a partner intermediary in Sustainability Victoria's Small Business Energy Saver program, and we're engaging with small businesses right across the region, giving them assistance on energy efficiency guidance and helping them connect to government programs so they can get more energy efficient technologies into their businesses. So that project will conclude at the end of this financial year. We're also delivering the Hume Community Power Hub, again, both projects in partnership with GB Community Energy. And that's really about assisting community deliver renewable energy projects. And that's a project that Claire's been working on. So that's a bit more of a taste of the projects we're working on. But the majority of our time is committed to those two pretty big projects in the Upper Murray. And we have our project manager, Heath Shakespeare, who's delivering those, and we will have a second project manager starting with us sometime over the next month as well, to make sure we're delivering those projects. Do you intend to buy our solar power longer term? How do you see the community batteries fitting in with private house batteries? So just to answer the first question, there is intention to buy our solar longer term, and this is actually a pretty interesting question. So at the moment, we're recognised as a green electricity provider, and we've been really lucky. We've had a lot of solar power customers join us as customers, which we're really grateful for. But it also means that we have a super surplus of solar. And if you look in the energy share software, you see that not all the energy that is being generated is being consumed within those local community energy hubs. And so what that means is we've got, I guess, a net excess of solar energy. So that's why we're really looking at electric vehicle charging stations, so that we can help people access some of that. We're looking at community batteries, so we can store some of that and sell that. Well, not sell that, but have people have access to that again in the evenings. So the answer is yes, we do intend to keep purchasing that from customers, and we do, I guess, celebrate the fact that we do have so much solar power. And our job, our responsibility really is to make sure other people who don't have solar panels have access to that renewable energy, and making sure that we're storing it perhaps in community batteries, so that we can share that electricity back during the evenings. So it's going to be a really important part of how we deliver our electricity retail service. And how do you see community batteries fitting in with private batteries? So I guess there's two things to say about that. One is this virtual power plant really will start at community batteries, and that's because, well, it's easier to have a few large assets as we're setting anything up. So we'll start with community batteries. There is perhaps an opportunity then, once we have learned how to do that well, once we have learned exactly what the business model is for that, then we can open that up to more community participants, households with their own batteries. And again, I guess the second answer to that question is this clean energy projects, clean energy solutions is one of our strategic areas of focus. So we really want to support our customers, support our communities to get as much of this clean energy generation, storage, efficiency technology out there as we possibly can. So we'll be looking to make that happen as best we can. Okay, so we've got a question about how is Indigo Power tracking towards profitability by 2026? What proportion of its income is planned to come from clean energy retail, clean energy infrastructure, clean energy projects? So great question. So at the moment, a lot of our revenue growth is being driven by the growth in our clean energy projects division of our company. And so our assumption going forward is that that's grown really quickly. From when we launched the first year offer in 2020, we didn't have a project management arm, and we have a project management arm now with actually a lot of work in front of us. So we don't really expect that to continue that rapid rate of growth, but we do expect to become better at building in, I guess, making sure those projects deliver a good margin, a good return to Indigo Power. And we do expect to continue to be able to develop, to build those relationships and to do that paid work. So that's there at the moment as a really important revenue stream for us. The second thing we assume is through this capital raise is we grow the electricity retail business to be the real revenue backbone of our business. And this next 18 months, that's going to be a focus, an absolute focus of our business, is customer growth, profitability, real profitability in that area of our business. So we'll be looking to bring community energy retail up to that area, or to that being providing that backbone to the business alongside the clean energy projects. Clean energy infrastructure we're actually really conservative about, so we don't really build that into our forward forecasts. So that's really a big opportunity there for us. And again, the projects that we've done today have really been really nice, really interesting pilot projects, innovative projects. What we're looking to do now is, take what we're learning there, and through these feasibility studies, we want to develop really good renewable energy projects with a good profit margin. But we don't say that we don't assume that's the case. We're really quite conservative in our assumptions there. So in the midterm, it's really about clean energy projects, and it's also about real improvement in clean energy retail. And we're quite comfortable that process is underway, and we are moving in that direction slowly across time, building revenue growth. As I say, we've been investing in the company, but our expectation is those costs now will hopefully plateau, and we can continue to build revenue as we build to that target of profitability by 2026. So another good question here about the implications of the upcoming wholesale energy price increases on retail supply and profitability, or is this balanced by generation? I mean, this is one that we could talk about for a very long time, actually. So I think simplest to say our approach to electricity, wholesale electricity, is really quite conservative. So we have a financial product through our partners that we deliver who we deliver the electricity retail supply with, Energy Locals. We have a really conservative wholesale strategy. Not really conservative, but conservative. That's to say, all of our volume, our customer volume, is covered by a financial product. So we are, in a sense, covered for these fluctuations in the wholesale prices. However, the long-term trends we're impacted by. So when we negotiate those hedging products, if the price is on the current trajectory going up, then so will those hedging products. So that will impact us. That will impact our prices that we charge customers. But that will be felt, I guess. That's going to be felt right across the board. I think the other thing to balance that is that, again, is to go back to that solar question. Our customers have a lot of solar, and if we can just get the time balance right, say we can capture a lot of that renewable energy, store that, then we begin to move to more of a physical hedge, and we can deploy those battery assets to accommodate the increases in the wholesale price. So it's a very interesting time in the wholesale market, and we have seen some electricity retailers drop out over the last few weeks. But we have these conservative hedging products because we know that the wholesale market can act like this, and we're looking to really benefit from our customer profile and all the renewable energy that we have out there. Yeah, so it's again an interesting question. So if the offer is oversubscribed, how will the shares be allocated? And those of you who missed out last time will experience that it cuts off. It's a first come first serve basis. So last time we sold the offer out, and that was that. We weren't expecting to sell the offer out and for people to miss out, but that's what happened. So if you purchase shares, you will get your full allocation. And if you miss out, then it's a sort of the opportunity is missed, I suppose. So important again to make sure you're sort of paying attention and when that 2-day period does open, that you use that opportunity. So again, another question about shares. What is the process of selling shares in the future? How do you find out the new share price at the time? Good question. So in the future, the opportunity to sell shares is pretty limited. So what we can certainly register a share trade in our system if you are able to find a willing buyer, but that would be something you negotiate between the seller and the buyer. I think an interesting bit of information is that this equity crowdsource funding really was pretty new when we did our first one in 2020. So it's a new innovation, I guess, in the financial sector, and it is changing rapidly. So Virtual, the company we're partnered with here, has raised funds to look at, well, can we deliver some sort of secondary market product? So I mean, we're at the start of this equity crowdsource funding journey, and it will continue to develop. And yeah, the share price at the time is just really what's negotiated. When can we use Indigo Power as a retailer? So if you're based anywhere in Eastern Victoria, or you're based anywhere in New South Wales that isn't around key urban centres, Sydney, Newcastle, Wollongong, then you can use Indigo Power as a retailer. If you're in some of those if you're in Western Victoria, Melbourne or Sydney, Wollongong, those sorts of places, then it will depend on us expanding to those areas. And expansion really looks like a big upgrade to our software, a big upgrade to the billing system, all those sorts of things. So look, we haven't got a timeline for that yet, but we're certainly looking at the moment, really having a review of our electricity retail and working out, answering some of these questions around delivering a really good service, delivering a profitable service, and then marketing and expanding that service. So it's something that we're reviewing at the moment. In a nutshell, how would you describe the benefits to the small investors in the long term, besides contributing to practical efforts to address climate change? So we do have really, really small shareholdings of up to $100, and that's really an invitation for people to come and to be involved in the company and really participate in the life of the company. And if you buy $100 worth of shares or something like that, that's really the invitation to you. I expect even if you are starting to get good percentage returns, they're not going to be huge amounts in the longer term. So the invitation really there is one to come and participate with us, celebrate our shared successes, and a good example I think of that is we launched in partnership again with Totally Renewable Yakandanda. We launched in July of that year the Yakandanda Community Battery, And I know we had a lot of Indigo Power shareholders there. We had 180 people come along. We had the Victorian Minister for Energy and Climate Change, Liv D'Ambrosio, come along, and it was really to launch the battery, and it was a festive atmosphere. We had electrical engineers on site to give a good rundown of exactly what was happening across the site, and as I say, we delivered a few tours. We had a free barbecue. It was a really good fun day, and so that, I guess, is the invitation to all of you, whether big shareholders or smaller shareholders, is to come and participate. And I guess it was a really enjoyable day. And I know we had a lot of proud Indigo Power shareholders there. So for the small shareholders, it's a warm invitation to you is to buy those $100, $200 worth of shares, and to come really participate. And you know, we have 281 shareholders at the moment. And when we all catch up at the Yackandandah Community Battery launch, for instance, it's a really good time. So, yeah, do you have plans to make shares in the future become tradable and generate investor income? I think the best answer there is no. That's not currently on any timeline or in any plan. However, if that became really easy to do, a virtual or someone like that presented a really neat software option that met all the regulatory requirements, then I'm sure we would look at that quite seriously. And again, all I can really do there is to say it's certainly something that those who are interested in this equity crowdsource funding space know is important. So there's good work happening in that direction. How do you imagine the new government will impact business over the next 3 years? What are the opportunities? So I think we're in a really good position. And as I say about that Yak battery, that was what we think the first of its type. We're delivering more as a part of other projects, community batteries. So we're getting a really good experience around how do we deliver those, the cost of delivering those, the technological challenges, all those sorts of things. So we're developing a real knowledge base, experience, skill set there. And then the Labor government, recently elected federal Labor government, has of course announced that they'll be installing or funding 400 community batteries. So Chris Bowen did come here probably 6 weeks ago or something like that. He didn't announce anything, but we certainly toured him around the Yackandandah community battery. So the right people certainly know about the work that we're doing here. So there's huge opportunities there in that space. And I guess the good thing about being an innovative company and committing to that innovation is that often we're innovating in the same direction that government wants to go, and we're pushing boundaries in the right direction, which means we have access to good funding streams. So again, for instance, these 2 feasibility studies we're looking at through the regional funded about $1.1 million all up to do that work, funded through the Regional Remote Communities Reliability Fund. And you couldn't think of a better fund for us. Regional Remote Communities Reliability, those are all the things that we're doing. So we were successful with 2 grant applications there. Fantastic. ARENA recently announced a sister funding body for that feasibility study funding grant. And so once those feasibility studies are ready, ARENA are saying to us, look, we funded those feasibility studies because we want to fund the outcomes. And so with the good feasibility studies, then we can go to ARENA, the federal government funding body, and say, here's what we've come up with. Here's how we're going to support regional and remote communities with better storage, supporting the local grid outcomes, and we can get government funding for those projects as well. So we've been, again, really lucky in the type of work we're doing is the type of direction, obviously, that the electricity industry is going in, and we've been lucky in the past to secure funding, and I expect that opportunity perhaps is definitely still there, and maybe even grows. So a huge opportunity to potentially leverage any funds we raise here, and at least match that with government funding. So a huge opportunity. And the time frames for the 2 feasibility studies, and what's the order, the scale of capital investments these projects may entail? Good question. So the time frames are both feasibility studies really started this quarter, I guess, of this calendar. So probably really got underway in earnest in April. So the time frames, they're 2-year time frames, but we're certainly working as fast as we can with all the opportunity there at the moment to do that hard work to get these projects investment ready, and the scale of capital investment. So look, it might be that the pumped hydro facility, 10 megawatt hours, we might be looking at something of the order of $10 million. The community batteries, I think we're saying we're looking at a feasibility study for a further 4 of those, and that's probably more looking at $1.5 million, depending on the size of those 4. But if we deliver only 1, then it's obviously a much smaller project. So the first question really is this innovative, interesting technology. How do we deliver that commercially? And the second question, I think, becomes an easy one. If we find the solution for that, then we know, as I've just described with the opportunities out there, that we can raise the funds to deliver them. So we're really excited about the opportunity, really working as hard as we can to realise it. So how do we identify which communities to partner with? Do we organise ourselves? So a good question. So we have a dedicated engagement officer, Claire Birch, and her job really is to do that work of if you're partnering with communities, working with communities to get them, do we organise ourselves? Well, yes, absolutely, but with Claire's assistance, absolutely as well. So for instance, a lot of the work we've done, we started with 8, I think, community renewable energy groups, and we're now at about 25. And a lot of those groups have come on and joined the network themselves, but we've also helped support a lot of those new groups to actually start themselves, delivered a forum, told them all the exciting things that have happened, helped get them organised, helped get them started, and then connect them to this community energy network so that they've got the supporting structure to get started successfully and keep going. So my suggestion would be to reach out to us in any way, social media, email, however you want, and ask for Claire's email, which is claire@indigopower.com.au, and she can get started with you on that journey. So is there a minimum amount to register to become a shareholder? The minimum amount is will be $100. And why isn't the offer doc available a few days before? Yeah, it's not something necessarily we have any control over. It's the offer document. It's the virtuals process. The offer document is launched at once at the start of this private investment stage. So I think it's important to say that once you have got that offer document there in front of you, I'm certainly available to have that conversation with you. If you'd like to email, pick up the phone with any questions. Really happy to facilitate that as well. So it's not I guess your opportunity is passed now for that sort of engagement. Absolutely available if you have further questions going forward. I've got one here about the difference between a community battery and a virtual power plant. Is a virtual power plant likely to be set up in Beechworth? So a community battery, really, the simplest way of looking at it and really the benefit to us is community battery is something that takes power out of the grid during the day in the solar peak and puts it back in. It puts it back in during the evening when basically during the you've got this peak solar period in the day and you've got this peak demand period when people get home at 5 o'clock, that sort of thing, through to about 8, 9 p.m. in the evening. So the community battery really time shifts the renewable energy from the day into the evening. And a virtual power plant is more of a community battery can be one. A virtual power plant is definitely more than one. And it's community batteries, but it can also be obviously household batteries as well. And is a VPP likely to be set up in Beechworth? Well, I think we do our job well. We do this feasibility study really well. Then that's a really clear way we can create extra value for our customers and to help them make the decision to invest in a battery, because a virtual power plant would help them access new markets and return some of those financial benefits back to our customers. So there's certainly an incentive for us to deliver one of those in Beechworth, and we're certainly doing the work to do that, but we haven't obviously made that commitment at this stage. So the value of a share. So we went through, the question is, what is the value of a share? So when we launched our first share offer in 2020, the value of the share was $1. We went through a number of exercises before this share offer to properly value the company and value the share offer and value the shares. And the company value through that process has increased slightly, and so the share offer has increased. The share price has increased slightly as well. So shares were $1, they're $1.30 at the moment when we sell them here. So what are your main risks? How are you mitigating them? That's another good question. Look, we deliver projects and we're absolutely careful about delivering projects to the highest standards with a real focus on health and safety, obviously. So there's risk there that we really have to carefully manage. And I think there's as well risks in the delivery of our retail business as well. And those are things like having competitive pricing, but there are also more things like, well, when we export solar from our customer base, we're exposed to the wholesale price. So how do we mitigate against that wholesale risk? Obviously, we're doing a lot of work around one, pricing to make sure that we can incentivize that daytime solar consumption. Two, electric vehicle charging stations to make sure we've got a place we're not that net exporter and exposed to the wholesale market. Three, as well, community batteries. I think that in that retail space, we've identified that we need to do a lot of work right now in that space to address some of those problems, and a lot of what we're doing now is with this raise is a focus on getting that retail really solid, and that's the net exporter problem. That's about delivering a really good service, delivering better customer service, those sorts of things. So I think it probably enough on that one for now, but certainly I'd say the main area of focus in the business at the moment is the electricity retail. What influence does Indigo Power envisage for the regions of Victoria, other regions of Victoria, e.g. southwest of Gippsland? I think again, it's a question of, well, if there are enthusiastic communities, then we're really pleased to hear from you. And if the stuff we've talked about here tonight is of interest, that local energy sharing concept, that project delivery, looking at that scale, generation and storage, all of that, local electricity generation, local customers, then we're really interested to hear from you, whether you're in southwest Gippsland or wherever it may be. And again, the first point of contact there is Claire. And a lot of the projects we're delivering at the moment started with those early conversations, and we're really open to them. So when we become profitable and return dividends to shareholders, what can we expect in terms of percentage returns? So profitable by 2026 is our current plan. In terms of returns, we're pretty careful, and we need to be in this equity crowdsource funding process about expected returns. I think our first, again, focus is, well, creating shareholder value through growing the value of the shares. That's a really important focus for us and something we can do right now. And we're starting to, build that balance sheet, investing in these projects, these assets, that sort of thing. And in terms of percentage returns, we're not really making that commitment at this stage, although we do obviously have that plan for profitability by 2026. And again, important to note that we're a social enterprise, so that those profits will be shared evenly between the purpose and the investors. So obviously a fair bit to cover in a lot of different topics. So thanks, Fran, for pulling all the questions together. So as a social enterprise, why do you pay so little for solar power you purchase from Indigo Power customers and sell it for more? So I guess that's a question of the really interesting thing about renewable energy in the market at the moment is the lower the price of renewable energy, the more people will use it, basically. So there's a real trade-off there. Is if we buy it from customers more, pay more for it from customers, we pay a real premium feed-in tariff. Then we have to add all the costs of supplying our customers. So we have to pay the feed-in tariff. Then we have to pay the cost of transporting that electricity on the grid. We have to pay for all the different market fees. We have to pay for all the environmental programs. We have to pay all the costs of the billing system, those sorts of things, delivering your retail business. And so that, 7 cents per kilowatt hour becomes something more like 24 cents a kilowatt hour as you add all those costs, those legitimate costs in there. So if we pay more for the solar power, then we would have to add all those costs again and charge more at the end of the day. So that 24 cents, if we pay, say, a 10-cent feed-in tariff, that 24 cents would become 27 cents. And so it's a balance. We want to really incentivize people to use as much renewable energy as possible, which means that there's a balance there in how much people are paid for their renewable energy feed-in. I think the other really important point there is, as the price of the feed-in tariff drops with the wholesale price, it matches basically the wholesale price. So that's been dropping, the feed-in tariff's been dropping. We've heard just recently that trend is now reversing. But as the feed-in tariff drops, it also provides, a neat incentive for. It's basically saying the market doesn't value that solar because there's so much electricity, there's so much supply into the market, and the price during the middle of the spring days, for instance, can go, and often has gone in the last year, a negative price. So when we're buying it from you for 7 cents, sometimes we have to pay also AEMO for them to take our electricity. So the market doesn't value that solar feed-in. So it forces us to think about, you know, the customer and Indigo Power about, well, how do we do better than that? How do we store that power in batteries, whether it's a household battery or a community battery? How do we find a user for that solar power in an electric vehicle charging station, whether that's in the home or in the community? So it's a question we often get asked, and it's really a question about, well, a fairness, because what we pay a solar customer, someone else who doesn't have solar has to pay that as well. So there's a balance there. Will other energy retailers benefit from community batteries as far as guarantee of supply penalties, and do you charge them? This is an interesting question. So I guess people are working out what's the correct value or correct way of valuing the service that a community battery might supply. And one of the things it might do is, if you're a network service provider, you have a guaranteed minimum amount of power supply you have to do. And if you don't meet that target, you have too many outages and that sort of thing, problems in the grid, then you have to pay a fee to customers. So the question would be, I guess, whether the network service provider would pay, say, an Indigo Power to be able to use that battery at key times and to avoid some of those fees. And these are exactly the sort of conversations that are happening at the moment. But all these regulatory changes, all these commercial arrangements need to swing into place to be able to make that happen. And so even though you can see the value that a community battery is providing right across the board like that, there's not necessarily ways of realising that value through the commercial relationships and that sort of thing. So we would love to charge the network service provider for helping them avoid that a guarantee of supply fee, but the commercial arrangements aren't there yet either. And other retailers, I mean, are in the same position as well. There's value in the stack that we know we can realise right now, and that's things like wholesale trading, things like frequency control, ancillary services, those sorts of things, and some of these other additions to the stack are still to come through. But that's why everyone's so interested in them, because we know that they can create that value. And I think for us here at Indigo Power, we'd like to think we're in a pretty competitive position around community batteries. One, because we're getting quite good at delivering the infrastructure. Two, is we're a retailer, so we can get all the benefit in those different items in that cost stack. And three, because we do focus quite heavily on building the community relationships to be able to deliver a community battery, include the community, and have a really nice outcome. So does electricity retailer constitute a significant proportion of the business income? And if so, do you intend to do more aggressive marketing to recruit more customers in the region? Good question. So we're currently delivering an electricity retail review that's looking at things like our pricing, that's looking at things like that electricity net export problem, that's looking at things like our customer service. So we want to get in a strong position with our retail offer, that we know it's a really good service, we know it's a really good product, we know we're really confident in a rock-tight, watertight business model. And then absolutely our intention is to go out and market that really strongly to our across the region. So it does provide a substantive revenue stream for Indigo Power, but we want to really make sure it's really strong before we go out and really market that product. So we're doing that work at the moment. As a small company, what is your continuity in a disaster and succession planning? So that's a good question, and I think as we've grown, it was a really probably big question in 2020 when it was me and one or two others. Now we have a company where we have, we'll have 10 staff probably by the end of June, but one more to come on. And we're starting to build a bit of redundancy in the staff team. So if we lose one or two key staff members, then we do have some redundancy there. We also have a really skilled board of directors. And to give you an example, I took some paternity leave last year, and we had Rick Thwaites, who's the chair of the projects committee, who really understands the business really well, was quite easily just able to step in to my role for those 3 weeks and manage the company in my absence. So we do now have some good redundancy across the board. Staff board capacity as well, to be able to cover any gaps that might emerge. Is there a benefit to being a large shareholder versus a small shareholder? And I guess that's really a question about any shareholding. You will get those nice benefits of being a part of Indigo Power, participating in Indigo Power, attending events, those sorts of things. But if you invest more, then you stand to gain more if Indigo Power continues to do well, grows the value of the company, those sorts of things. So, and starts distributing profits. So in that sense, the financial returns will be bigger if you invest more. So the shares, a question about how much are the shares and how many can you purchase. So the minimum purchase of the shares will be $100. The shares will be $1.30 per ordinary share. And how many can you purchase? Well, the upper limit there is, in our constitution, we've got a 15% limit to any one person or organisation can own. Can't own more than 15% of the company, and again, that's really about making sure we keep that true community ownership. So that would be the upper limit you can buy. In the equity crowdsource funding offer, though, it is limited to $10,000 unless you can establish that you're a sophisticated investor. And if you're a sophisticated investor, basically that's a proof from your accountant saying you meet those guidelines, when you meet those requirements. And I think that's a certain amount of income each year, or a certain amount of capital or worth that you have. So if you are interested in investing more than $10,000, being a sophisticated investor is the next step. What kind of partners is IP looking for as co-investors in clean energy infrastructure that it's doing the feasibility studies for? So I guess a part of that feasibility study will be to look at all those things. Who are our partners in the projects? What does Indigo Power choose to do itself? And what does Indigo Power choose to partner with or even outsource as a part of these projects? So I guess if someone's out there and does have something they might feel they can contribute, they're certainly welcome to reach out and to have those conversations as this feasibility study is unfolding over the next 18 months. Will we target new government community battery funding opportunities? So I think the answer there is absolutely we will. Yeah. I think that's a really big opportunity for us and something we're really well positioned to see. So we'll absolutely be looking at those opportunities and how we can make the most of those. Yeah. Oh, this is a good question actually. So will we be able to feed in at night time for a higher rate in the future? And really, the question I think is well, the value now for solar, for renewable energy is so differentiated across the day. It's often worth very little during the middle of the day, but can be worth a lot at certain times, again, in those peak demand times. So I think the onus is on us to provide a pricing, a tariff that really starts to incentivize people to use electricity, in a sensible way. And what that looks like, maybe that looks like a feed-in tariff for battery users who are away on holidays. Maybe it looks like a virtual power plant option for those to use at specific times. All of those sorts of things, we're certainly looking at the moment. So I think that's the last question, and a really big thank you to everyone who came along tonight and who is still there. Again, we're really excited about where we're up to as a company. Again, the first share offer, we came out with a big idea. We weren't sure exactly whether people would like it, whether people would join us. Now we're feeling really good. We've done a lot of work. We've made some excellent progress, and we're really excited to be able to welcome a new cohort of shareholders. So a big invitation for you to join us as shareholders. We look forward to welcoming you. And again, I'm available. My email is there. My phone number is there. And especially if you're having problems or you have questions over the coming weeks, I'm really happy to set up a time to have that conversation with you or answer your questions. So please feel free to reach out. So again, big thank you for coming along wherever you are in Australia. A big thanks to the Indigo Power board who are there tonight, our staff. A lot of you are online as well, and a big thanks to Claire and Fran who are in the room tonight, working pretty frantically behind the scenes. So we'll wish you good night and look forward to hopefully welcoming you as a shareholder over the coming weeks. Thank you, everyone.